Hello, I'm back again for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Part 6. On his way out, the lawyer stopped and had a word or two with Paul. By the by, said he, there was a letter handed in today. What was the messenger like? By Paul. But Paul was positive nothing had come except by post, and only circulars by that, he added. The news sent off the visitor with his fears renewed. Plainly the letter had come by the laboratory door. Possibly, indeed, it had been written in the cabinet, and if that were so, it must be differently judged and handled with the more caution. The newsboys, as he went, were crying themselves hoarse along with the footways. Special edition, shocking murder of an MP. That was the funeral orientation of one friend and client. He could not help a certain apprehension lest the good name of another should be sucked down in the eddy of the scandal. It was at least a ticklish decision that he had to make, and self-reliant as he went by habit, he began to cherish a longing for advice. It was not to be had directly, but perhaps he thought it might be finished for. Presently after, he sat on one side of his own hearth, with Mr. Guest, his head clerk, upon the other, and midway between, at a nicely calculated distance from the fire, a bottle of particular old wine that had long dwelt unassumed in the foundations of his house. The fog still slept on the wing, above the drowned city, where the lamps glimmered like carbuncles. And though the muffle and smother of these fallen clouds, the procession of the town's life was still rolling in through the great articles with the sound of a mighty wind. But the room was gay with firelight. In the bottle the acids were long ago resolved. The empirical dry was had softened with time. As the colours grow richer in stained windows, and the glow of the hot autumn afternoons on hillside vineyards was ready to be set free, and to disperse the fogs of London. Insensibly the lawyer melted. There was no man from whom he kept fewer secrets than Mr. Guest, and he was not always sure that he kept as many as he meant. Guest had often been on business to the doctors. He knew Paul. He knew he could scarce have fallen to hear of Mr. Hyde's familiarity about the house. He might draw conclusions. Was it not as well then that he should see a letter which put the mystery to right? And above all, since Guest, being a great sudden and critic of handwriting, would consider the step natural and obliging. The clerk, besides, was a man of counsel. He could scarce read so strange a document without dropping a remark, and by the remark Mr. Utterson might shape his future course. This is sad business about Sir Danvers, he said. Yes, sir, indeed. It has inclined a great deal of public feeling, returned Guest. The man, of course, was mad. I should like to hear your views on that, replied Utterson. I have a document here in his handwriting. It is between ourselves, for I scarce know what to do about it. It is an ugly business at the best, but there it is, quite in your way, a murderer's autograph. Guest's eyes brightened, and he sat down at once and studied it with passion. No, sir, he said, not mad, but it is an odd hand. And by all accounts a very odd writer, added the lawyer. Just then the servant entered with the note. It is then from Dr. Jekyll, sir? Inquired the clerk. I thought I knew the writing. Anything private, Mr. Utterson? Only an invitation to dinner. Why? Do you want me to see it? One moment, I thank you, sir. And the clerk laid the 2 sheets of paper alongside the sidiously compared their contents. Thank you, sir, he said at last, returning both. It's a very interesting autograph. There was a pause, during which Mr. Utterson struggled with himself, Why did you compare them, guest? He inquired suddenly. Well, sir, returned the clerk. There's a rather singular resemblance. The two hands are in main points identical, only indifferently sloped. Rather quaint, said Utterson. It is as you say, rather quaint, returned Guest. I would speak of the note, you know, said the master. No, sir, said the clerk, I understand. But no sooner was Mr. Utterson alone that night than he locked the note into his safe, where it responded from that time forward. What, he thought, Henry Jekyll forged for a murderer. What he thought Henry Jekyll first forged for a murderer, and his blood ran cold in his veins. Incident of Dr. Lord Leighton. Time only ran on. Thousands of pounds were offered in reward for the death of Sir Danvers. Time ran on. Thousands of pounds were offered in reward for the death of Sir Danvers. Was resented as a public inquiry, but Mr. Hyde had disappeared out of the ken of the police, as though he had never existed. Much of his part was unearthed. Indeed, and all disputable tales came out of the man's cruelty, at once so callous and violent, of his vile life, of his strange associates, of the hated that seemed to have surrounded his career, but of his present whereabouts not a whisper. From the time he had left the house in Soho on the morning of the murder, he was simply blotted out, and gradually, as time drew on, Mr. Utterson began to recover from the hotness of his alarms, and to grow more at quiet with himself. The death of Sir Danvers was, to his way of thinking, more than paid by the disappearance of Mr. Hyde. Now then, that evil influence had been withdrawn. A new life began for Dr. Jekyll. He came out of his seclusion, renewed relations with his friends, and became once more their familiar guest and entertainer. And whilst he had always been known for his charities, he was now no less distinguished for religion. He was busy as he was as much in the open air. He was busy. He was as much in the open air. He did good. His face seemed to open and brighten as if with an inward consciousness of service. And far more than 2 months, the doctor was at peace. On the 8th of January, Utterson had dined at the doctor with a small party. Leighton had been there, and the face of the host had looked from one to the other in the old days, when the trio were inseparable friends. On the 12th, again on the 14th, the door was shut against the lawyer. The doctor was confused to the house, Paul said, and saw no one. On the 15th he tried again, and was again refused. And having now been used for the last 2 months to see his friend almost daily, he found the return of solitude to weigh upon his spirits. The 5th night he had in guest to dine with him, and the 6th he betook himself to Dr. Leighton's. There at least he was not denied attendance. But when he came in, he was shocked at the change which had taken place in the doctor's appearance. He had his death warrant written legibly upon his face. The rosy man had grown paler. His flesh had fallen away. He was visibly balder and older, and yet it was not so much these tokens of a swift physical decay that arrested the lawyer's notice, as a look in the eye and quality of manner that seemed to testify to some deep-seated terror of the mind. It was unlikely the doctor should fear death, and yet that was what Utterson was tempted to suspect. Yes, he thought, he is a doctor, he must know his own state, and that his days are counted, and the knowledge is more than he can bear. And yet when Utterson remarked on his ill looks, it was an air of great firmness that Leighton declared himself a doomed man. I had a shock, he said, and I shall never recover. In a question of weeks, well, life has been pleasant. I liked it. Yes, sir. I used to like it, and I sometimes think if we knew all, we should be more glad to get away. Jekyll is ill too, observed Utterson. Have you seen him? But Leighton's face changed, and he held up a trembling hand. I wish to see or hear no more of Dr. Jekyll, he said, in a loud, unsteady voice. I'm quite done with that person, and I'm begging that you will spare me any illusion as to whom I regard as dead. Tut tut, said Mr. Utterson. And then, after a considerable pause, can't I do anything? He inquired. We are three very old friends, Leighton. We shall not live to make others. Nothing can be done, returned Leighton. Ask himself. He will not see me, said the lawyer. I'm not surprised at that, was the reply. Some day, Utterson, after I'm dead, you may perhaps come to learn the right and wrong of this. I cannot tell you. And in the meantime, if you sit and talk with me of other things, for God's sake, stay and do so. But if you cannot keep clear of this accursed topic, then in God's name go, for I cannot bear it. As soon as he got home, Utterson sat down and wrote to Dr. Jekyll, complaining of the exclusion from the house, and asking the cause of the unhappy break with Leighton. And the next day brought him a long answer, very often very pathetically worded, and sometimes darkly mysterious in drift. The quarrel with Leighton was incurable. I do not blame our old friend, Jekyll wrote, but I share his view that we must never meet. I mean from henceforth to lead a life of extreme seclusion. You must not be surprised, nor must you doubt my friendship. If my door is often shut to you, you must suffer me to go my own dark way. I have brought on myself a punishment and a danger that I cannot name. If I am the chief of sinners, I am the chief of sufferers also. I could not think that the earth contained a place of suffering and terrors so unnaming. And you can do all but one thing, Utterson, to lighten this destiny. That is to respect my silence. Utterson was amazed by the dark influence of Hyde, and had been withdrawn. The doctor had returned to his old tasks, amenities. A week ago, the prospect had smiled with everyone promise of a cheerful and honoured age, and now in a moment friendship and peace of mind, the whole tenor of his life, were wrecked. So great and unprepared a change pointed to madness, but in a view of Leighton's manner and words, there must lie for it some deeper ground. A week afterwards, Dr. Leighton took to his bed, and in something less than a fortnight he was dead. The night after the funeral, which he had been sadly affected, Utterson locked the door of his business room. Sitting there in the night, a melancholy candle drew out and set before him an envelope addressed by the hand and sealed with the seal of his dead friend, private for the hands of G. Utterson alone, and a case of his predicase to be destroyed unread. So it was emphatically superscribed, and the lawyer dreaded to behold its contents. I have buried one friend today, he'd have thought. What if this should cost me another? And then he condemned the fear as a disloyalty and broke the seal. Within it there was another enclosure, likewise sealed the marked upon the cover as not to be opened till the death or disappearance of Dr. Henry Jekyll. Utterson could not trust his eyes, yet it was disappearance here again, as in the mad will, which he had long ago restored to its author. And here again were the idea of a disappearance and the name of Henry Jekyll bracketed, but in the will that idea had sprung from the sinister suggestion of the man Hyde. It was set there with a purpose all too plain and horrible, written by the hand of Leighton. What should it mean? And great curiosity came on the trustee to disregard the prohibition and dive at once to the bottom of these mysteries. But professional honour and faith to his dead friend was stringent obligations, and the packet slept in the inmost corner of his private safe. It is one thing to mortify curiosity, another to conquer it, and it may be doubted if from that day forth Utterson desired the society of his surviving friend and the same eagerness he thought of him kindly, but his thoughts were quite distinguished and fearful. He went to call, indeed. He was perhaps relieved to be denied admittance, perhaps. In his heart he preferred to speak with Paul upon the doorstep, and surrounded by the air and sounds of the open city, rather than to be admitted into that house of voluntary bondage, and to sit and speak with inscrutable recluse. Paul had indeed no very pleasant news to communicate. The doctor, it appeared, now more than ever confined himself to the cabinet over the laboratory, where he would sometimes even sleep. He was out of spirits, and he had grown very silent and did not read it. It seemed as if he had something on his mind. Utterson became so used to the unwavering character of these reports that he felt off, little by little, of the frequency of his visits. And there we have part 6. Part 7 is in a couple of weeks' time. I hope you've enjoyed this. And I shall see you again in a couple of weeks' time. Bye-bye for now.